Howdy y'all. If none of y'all have got the money to play the Freelance Heist, then I'm really sorry, you'll have to skip out on this one. I have so many things to say about this that it's overwhelming, and this is basically a Harvey, Jade, and Dimitri theory time, all in one. Also, a small bit of the Freelancer, because, of course, the Freelance Heist contributed to their character in multiple ways. Anyway, theory time. So let's begin with a recap of the Freelance Heist. Reminder once again, major spoilers for the DLC, this is your last chance to turn back. The four all meet together, all being blackmailed by the broker. First, they have to do some work for this broker, getting information and tracking the thing that the broker wants them to get. Soon they learn that the broker is trying to get them gold, and Harvey and Jade convince Finch and Dimitri that they're going to take it for themselves and defect against the broker. They get the gold, and it's revealed that Harvey and Finch were behind the plot, and they quickly kill Dimitri and Jade. But when Harvey tries to kill Finch as well in an act of betrayal, Finch reacts quicker, and you get to choose whether to kill or spare Harvey. Of course, I chose to kill that hoe the second the prompt appeared. That's the end of the story. About my previous Freelance Heist theory, I got almost nothing wrong. I'm not even joking. I predicted Harvey's betrayal, his muscle army attitude, the Freelancer receiving great trust issues in their enclosed shell due to it, Harvey screwing up during Vegas. I got it all right, y'all. Except for the brotherly bond part and the family pass. Two things were incorrect, but overall I was mostly right. So now, let's move on to the Freelance Heist quartet, and I'm going to go through them all separately, starting with Harvey. Harvey's log reveals that he grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and has associations with Ren and the Boston Four. They contracted Harvey to scout locations and insiders, but that's his only relation to them. He has nearly never participated in an armed robbery. I don't know how my theory times usually go, but today I'm dropping y'all off straight into the deep end. What if I told y'all that Harvey is secretly an incredibly anxious and self-tortured man? His clothing description states, quote, "You've been unfortunate enough to learn that plans fail and allies betray you," end quote. So Harvey hasn't always been the best criminal, and not everyone has been nice to him. His log file also reveals that Harvey trusts absolutely nobody and leaves no track uncovered. It also shows that over time, Harvey has become increasingly anxious and paranoid. Harvey has been betrayed before, or maybe even multiple times. Harvey was conned. He got into the criminal business and was betrayed. He was in the freelancer's position once. The betrayal left Harvey emotionally scared, anxious, and paranoid. So what does he do? Become a con man. The betrayal of someone, who we'll call Omar just so we have a name, led Harvey to believe that conning was the only way to thrive. He refuses to let himself be used and possibly get killed again. He's terrified and so desperate to stay alive. Harvey is a man who's so terrified of the world that he wraps himself in isolation and blood to get away from it and save himself. He hardly cares. He just wants to stay alive. Con or be conned. He learned his unlawful policies from being betrayed himself, and he goes on to continue the cycle. He becomes the freelancer's Omar. Harvey is such a desperate and paranoid man. He backstabs and kills every single person he works with. The phone call that nearly killed all of the Boston Four, that was Harvey, leaving no trace of himself behind. Harvey is a great example of healing incorrectly from a traumatizing incident. He took away the wrong lessons. He hides from everything and everyone, and ends up believing that in order not to be killed, he must become the killer. His constant schemes and isolation chip away at his mental health, as he becomes more and more paranoid and starved for what he wants. He wants to live. He just wants to get the money he needs and live. He runs from everything. He deceives everything because he's terrified. What's worse is, the freelance heist was most likely his last hit. He almost made it. He almost survived the crime scene like he was so desperate to do. I looked it up. $20 million is a lot of money, not quite enough to be 100% set for life, but combined with all the money from the previous people Harvey has conned, which considering it says over time his mental health and paranoia became worse and worse, it implies that he's been conning for a while. All of that combined with this hit, I'm sure would have been enough to have Harvey finally retire from crime. He was so close, but he didn't make it. He tripped at the finish line. Harvey apparently describes himself as classy, but look at him. His outfit looks like he barely tried. His hair is shaggy and untrimmed, like he doesn't take care of it, because he doesn't. He just cons and he cons, too frantic to properly take care of himself. I imagine that at the start of his career of Omar, he was dressed more nicely and had better hair because Jesus Christ, who dyed Justin Bieber blonde and then gave him a beard because it doesn't look good. As his mental status decreased, so did how well he took care of himself. He was too busy conning to look in the mirror. He's probably aware of who he is, but doesn't care. He wants to live. He wants nothing more than to live and never be hurt again. That's why he targeted Jade. She worked with him in the past, so she's evidence he needs to get rid of. With Dimitri, he needed a pilot, and he knew that he and Jade were friends, so he chose to calm Dimitri as well. Also, Harvey screwing up in Vegas is probably because his mental health got the best of him and he didn't perform very well. Or he isn't used to doing the work himself. He's more about using other people to do the work and then killing them and stealing the credit. Let's move on to Dimitri and Jade. I'm talking about them together, since their story has a lot to do with each other. Dimitri, his wife, and his newborn daughter went to America, and then Dimitri owed a very large debt to a cartel and is trying to pay them off by working for them against his will. I already figured out how Dimitri got involved with the cartel. He's an illegal immigrant. He got to America because the cartel snuck him in, and that's why he owes a large debt to them. I say this because of his newborn daughter. Russia does not have a lot of rights for women. I can imagine that can be a motive for moving to America. Dimitri and his wife, who we'll call Nadia, wanted a life where their daughter, who we'll call Julie, can you tell I like nicknaming nameless characters, to grow up in a world where she'll be respected. So they had the cartel take them into America, and now Dimitri is indebted to them. A horrible turn of events, but he'll do anything for his family. As if things couldn't get bad enough, I have even worse news for poor Dimitri here. I believe that Nadia, Dimitri's loving wife, is dead. Here are my reasons. Dimitri is left to pay the debt all by himself. If his wife was helping, you'd think his log file would point out that he's partners in crime with Nadia. That makes it likely that he's doing this alone. I'm pretty sure Nadia will rot to help her husband out. Now I know what you might be thinking. What if Nadia was just taking care of Julie so she couldn't help out? That is where Jade comes in. Somehow, Jade befriended Dimitri at some point in her life, and they've become very close. Note that, according to Jade's log file, she's a sniper who's taken out 2 cartel members without payment, so it's likely she killed them for personal vendetta. Well, golly gosh, gee, I wonder where she could have gotten 2 cartel members from. Dimitri's cartel. She killed 2 higher-up members. Why? She was angry. Dimitri broke one day and told Jade about his problem with the cartel. Why did he break? Because his wife was killed. By the cartel members. They did it to keep Dimitri in line. Maybe Nadia had had enough and was protesting the debt or trying to get Dimitri away, and the cartel members killed her. Or maybe they weren't even supposed to be on the boat in the first place. They snuck on, and they shot her and kept Dimitri and made him indebted to them. Jade definitely didn't kill them in an attempt to free him from his debt. If she did, she would have approached the situation differently. Just killing 2 people won't stop the cartel. It was an act of furious vengeance. In fact, that is exactly how Jade became a sniper. According to her log file, she was only 22 when she died. That's incredibly young for an assassin. Jade is very young. What would inspire her into a life of crime so early? Learning about Dimitri's situation. And that is just their lives before the freelance heist. Wait until I talk about their relations to the freelance heist and Finch. You don't have to wait, because that's what I'm going to talk about now. Finally, onto Finch, or the freelancer. I've got quite the tale for them. If you watch my freelancer theory, you'll know the reasons I provided for Harvey muscle arming Finch into crime. And in Departure, Harvey says, quote, I taught you everything you know, end quote. So Harvey was Finch's mentor for all throughout the crime scene so far. Based on those reasons, I can safely say that Harvey convinced Finch to run away with him to commit crimes together. Also, Harvey is an incredibly toxic friend, offering horrible advice, trying to be the boss constantly. His behavior, just his entire demeanor set off so many red flags in my head. I literally hissed when Harvey placed his hand on Finch's shoulder. Also, notice how at the end of Departure, Finch isn't that surprised about Harvey's betrayal and recognizes him as a true conman. They didn't suspect that Harvey was going to betray them, but they were suspecting that he wasn't a good person, like real toxic friend relationships. At some point, a person knows that the other friend is toxic, but they're still holding out and trying to ignore it, because breaking off friendships is hard, especially when you still care about them but know they don't deserve you. Harvey's behavior is very controlling. Replay Freelance Heist and look for the red flags. You're gonna find so many. Harvey acts so fake and so controlling that it was frustrating to watch. When Finch said, "Are you sure we can trust him?" when asking about the armorer, they assumed that she was a male. Why? It's such an odd detail to put in the story. There's no reason for them to have assumed the armorer was a guy. Except there is. This is either A, Finch thinking that the armorer is secretly Harvey posing as someone else for the plan, or B, that Harvey's manipulation is working. Whenever a superior/unknown figure is mentioned, Harvey is instantly the image that pops in their mind, because Harvey is indeed superior and mysterious in Finch's eyes. Harvey wasn't just controlling Finch, he threatened Jade in this setup as well, which by the way is a horrible mission in my opinion. It's a smaller version of the FCRS with some new stuff. The mission itself was absolutely incredible, but the map was just baby SCRS. Hell, you can see a good amount of SCRS models reused along with the same walls and floors. I don't have a problem with reusing the models. But if you need a table of computers and already got one, then by all means go ahead. But don't reuse it to the point where it's just SCRS's little sister, which is exactly what happened. Back to the point, Harvey is a con man. He's clearly controlling and abusive towards Finch and everybody else. He just wants to use them, which was 100% proven in Departure, aka the best cutscene in all of Entry Point, and you cannot change my mind. I didn't expect for Finch to get even more character development, but it was greatly welcomed. He was an abusive, toxic friend from the start, covering up by constantly reminding Finch he's just trying to look out for him. Their friendship was never real. Jade already has a bad impression of Harvey and hates him, so when she saw Finch, she hated them instantly as well. Look at her dialogue and the setup and the prelude. She's so cold towards Finch. She was relentlessly mean. Meanwhile, in complete contrast, I think Dimitri has been kind to Finch. It doesn't take a genius to realize that Harvey is not the best person, which, by the way, I love how Sish made it obvious that Harvey was toxic without making it clear that he was going to betray them. That's a very hard line to walk, and Sish walked it, so well done. Finch is definitely incredibly stressed out and unhappy throughout the freelance heist. They hate conning, they know Harvey isn't a good friend, they don't want to do this. In Take, we can see that Finch is stressed, and they need Harvey to comfort them. Poor Finch is suffering so much, and with Jade's rude behavior only adds to her worries. Their only real comfort is Dimitri. It would be just like him to reassure and console a guy who, at the very least, has a horrible friend. Over time, as Jade is still being a bully, she also realizes that Finch is truly just suffering. They aren't like Harvey. If anything, they're a victim to Harvey, not an accomplice. Jade starts swallowing her pride and coldness and genuinely befriends them. This has to be the case, because Harvey tells Finch, quote, "I told you not to get attached," end quote, when they were killed. Harvey knows they were friends, and he didn't like it because he wanted control of the freelancer. The only reason Finch would have gotten attached is if they obviously talked and bonded. As the story goes on, look at Jade's dialogue and missions. Her coldness to Finch decreases. Jade, your feelings about the freelancer are more inconsistent than my voice. Unfortunately, at the end of the story, Finch follows through the plan and kills them, a decision they surely regret. Finch was used and tricked and manipulated, but they are still responsible for their own actions, even if Harvey influenced them and forced them. But guess what? That's not where the story ends. Hear me out real quick. Finch did not shoot Harvey. Harvey had the gun aimed at Finch's head. Do you seriously think that Finch turned around fast enough to shoot Harvey? It's impossible. So who shot Harvey? Dimitri. Dimitri was still alive. Look at their bodies. Jade is dead. She's a pancake on the ground. But Dimitri, he's holding his gun wound. He is alive in that shot. And Dimitri is so insanely kind, loving, and understanding. He instantly knew that Finch didn't want to do this. He immediately showed his forgiveness by saving them and shooting Harvey. Attack me in cap locks all you want, but this is actually more logical than Finch turning around quickly enough to attack Harvey first. Their hands weren't even close to their gun. They'd have to reach for the gun, then aim and shoot before Harvey pulled the trigger. It's impossible. Harvey would have shot first. Dimitri saved Finch, swiping Jade's gun, and dying doing the thing he always refused to do before, hurt somebody. Dimitri's life was truly unfair. Summary time. Harvey became a con man because he survived being conned, falsely learning that that was the only way to survive and gaining a heavy anxiety, paranoia, and desperation. Dimitri and his wife wanted to raise their daughter in America. They found a cartel who promised to get them to the United States, leaving them heavily indebted to the cartel. The wife unfortunately died along the way, killed by the cartel members. Jade is friends with Dimitri, and angry about his situation, avenged his wife by sniping the ones responsible for her death. Jade just wishes to help Dimitri and protect him. He's the entire reason she even became a sniper. Harvey pulled Finch into the life of crime, teaching them thieving skills and how to become a con. Harvey was a toxic and horrible friend and figure, making Finch feel miserable and questioning their friendship, but it's hard to break away from toxic people when you care about them. Harvey just controlled them. Jade added to this, seeing Finch as an enemy since he was a criminal and Harvey's partner in crime, so she was aggressive towards him. Dimitri saw the red flags of Harvey and comforted and grew close to Finch, to which Jade eventually realizes that Finch is a victim and no threat to Dimitri, so they also become friends. When departure happens, Dimitri, despite being betrayed by Finch, either forgives them instantly or already knows Finch was forced into the plan, as he shoots Harvey and dies, saving their life. This leaves Finch with trust issues and a life of crime ahead of them, as they couldn't possibly return to their family after what they did. And that's that. God. Jade, Finch, and Dimitri would have just been the perfect family if they didn't die. Dimitri did not deserve that. I honestly feel bad for Dimitri and Jade. Jade overcame her own misgivings and made an effort to trust and care for Finch, and then they just backstab her. I'm sure she would understand that they were forced to comply, but it's definitely something she wouldn't forget for a long time. I imagine if Jade had survived, she would maybe eventually be Finch's friend again, but still forever hold him over for the betrayal. I want to make it clear that Finch was forced to follow through with the broker plot, but are still responsible for their own actions. And this theory is exactly why I'm a proud Harvey fan and freelancer ex-Dimitri shipper. Y'all heard me. Don't be afraid to ship. It's actually harmless, contrary to popular belief. If you respect people and don't make gross art or stories. Looking at you, Frank. Dart himself said respectful shipping is okay, so y'all really have no argument to make. See y'all.